Good morning, guys. Today we will talk a little bit about the equations of kinematics, and I want to discuss the idea that follows. Basically, what you have as a list of information, numerical data that you can work with in problems with acceleration is a set of 5 values. One of them is, of course, how much something has moved, the displacement. The other one is what is the velocity that it started with, the initial velocity. Number 3, that will be the velocity it ends with, the final velocity. And finally, you have the time interval that the motion takes and the acceleration that you can observe for this object. For the following discussion, we will consider situations where the object is actually moving only on a straight line. So it's either speeding up, like so, or it's slowing down, like this. So, considering only situations where an object moves on a straight line, how do we calculate a given value when you have a limited set of variables? Acceleration, initial velocity, final velocity, and time interval are all combined in this formula that we know so far. Acceleration is equal to final velocity minus initial velocity divided by time. So the basic idea is, if you want to find one of these 4 variables, you're gonna need the other 3, so that in a problem, if you can determine that you have, for example, the acceleration, the initial velocity, and the time, it is relatively easy to find the final velocity. You can still get another situation where your acceleration is not present. For example, imagine that you know the initial velocity, the final velocity, the displacement of the object, and the time interval. Under these conditions, what I want you to consider is the concept of average velocity. The average velocity, as we discussed several times in class, can be obtained in 2 different ways. On one hand, the average velocity is the total displacement divided by the time interval. On the other hand, the average velocity is the average between the initial and final velocities, and since we have 2 pieces of data, you divide by 2. So the idea goes like this: what if we skip this middle guy? What if we want only to discuss the relationship between the other 4 variables? Then what you will end up with is that the displacement divided by the time is equal to the initial velocity plus the final velocity divided by 2. And here goes another equation that we are going to call very friendly number 2. So we have this as your equation 1, and this is your equation 2. When do we use this equation? Simply when you have, for example, how much something moved, the time it took, and the velocity. And say you want to find the final velocity, a little algebra should do the trick. So we will discuss more on this later.